Good.
I was
Yay.
born ready.
Yay, we're live.
Yep, definitely.
We are live for our special.
Pesach Sameach.
Our special Mitzvah Tears Pesach 2025 or whatever year. What year is this? 5784? Is that the year?
I think that's what it is, but I always forget. I know
I'll check.
that we're
it's 5785.
Are we in Nissan or ER? I think
this is Nissan. This is the 20th of, so it's Friday, April 18, Nissan 20 5785.
Cool.
And the Omer count is 6 because we start counting the Omer.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
What was I gonna say?
And this being Passover, we're not going to try to conduct a Seder service. We are going to try to conduct a service that has been altered so that it focuses on Pesach and especially the seventh night of Pesach, which in turn focuses on the Israelites crossing the Red Sea.
Absolutely, yeah.
And
it's interesting to really do Pesach and stuff for me the last couple of years when I hadn't really been for a while because I was brought up in sort of a mixed language situation, so je connais le français un petit peu, and in French the word for Easter is Pâques. And I always wondered why there was such a difference between that and the English term, and realizing, oh wait, Pesach, there's sort of a thing there. So in a way, because I believe we're coming up on Easter Sunday soon or something like that, right now we're in a spot of time that has two Pâques.
Yes, and
Easter
Sunday is this Sunday.
Yeah.
Today is Good Friday. I don't know what's so good about it. I got a Sunday school when I asked, but it is.
Yeah, I have been waiting to do that one all day.
What, the Good Friday or Tupac?
The Tupac joke, yes.
I have a friend who met Tupac. She said he was very nice. So.
Oh wow, yeah. Of course, he's apparently was a decently cordial guy if you didn't piss him off.
Yes.
Most people are.
Yeah, that's true. It's like
some people are very easy to piss on.
Yeah, he wasn't that easy. Apparently, is what I mean. It's just, but there were specific things, and didn't go well. Anyways.
Okay, well. I lit my candles right before we came online because, Marav and I light together now that I'm here. And
Rebecca's lit already.
Oh, darn.
So, but it's time for you all to light. So.
Yes. It's our lighting time.
It's our lighting time.
Yeah.
Oh, it's lighting time again.
Isaac? When we light today, this is both a Yom Tif and Shabbat, and we can also do. We did Shekianu here when we did it as well.
Mm-hmm. So we say Shabbat Yom Tif or Yom Tif Shabbat or something like that, right?
The way the candles are. Oh well, here we have Shel Shabbat so it'll be Shel Shabbat Yom Tif.
Right. Thank you for reminding me.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah.
Barakata Adonai, Eloheinu, Melech HaOlam, Asher Kiddushanu, Mitzvatav, V'tzivanu, L'chad Lekneu, Shel Shabbat, Yom Tov. Blessed are you, Lord our God, King of the universe, who has sustained us and allowed us to reach this occasion.
Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, שהחיינו והגיענו וקיימנו לזמן הזה.
Amen.
So, if you're new to this show.
Mhm.
You've probably cobbled together the realization that we are not professionals.
No.
We are the mortal remains of the Mitzvahers. We are entirely a lay group.
Mm.
And we stretch from one side of the Americas to the other at this point. And we've got people listening all around the world, generally.
Yeah.
We can always use more listeners, of course.
Yeah.
And this is an inclusive community. There's one criterion for inclusion, other than that you want to come,
Mhm.
and that would be that you're of positive intent.
Mhm.
And that would be defined as the kind of reason for being here that pretty much everyone would be fine with. That's not that hard to do, right? So if you've ever run into some exclusivist doctrine associated with Judaism, that's fine. There are numerous movements within Judaism, and some of them do exclude on the basis of one thing or another. We don't.
Nah. It's a lot of us here have could tell you a myriad stories about the other groups that were all too willing to get picky and choosy with us. And
Rabbi Gerber, who oversaw my, he thought, unnecessary conversion, said to me that, if you think you're Jewish, you're either crazy or Jewish, and you don't seem crazy to me. He didn't know me very well, but that's a joke. So it's that kind of attitude. If you want to be here, if something's calling it.
Yeah.
And it wasn't us. We're not proselytizing.
Yeah, no, we don't.
We're just welcoming.
Yeah. We aren't supposed to be doing missionaries and such. It's like it's something you need to feel the call for yourself.
Yep. And if you want to be here, curiosity is fine.
That's why there's the whole tradition of like trying to discourage someone 3 times, because like they gotta be sure, man.
Isaac, did you and your dad plan these rap references? He says it wasn't us, which is Shaggy. You're doing Tupac. Like, I feel left out. Like, who am I supposed to do?
No, we didn't. I'm not. I haven't really looked into Shaggy before.
I don't even know what you're talking about.
Is this the Insane Clown Posse one, or is this a different?
You know what it is? If it is a coordinated thing, it wasn't us who coordinated it.
Yeah.
But then about like over half of the missiles that the Yahoos, the Houthis, the Houthis fire at Israel fall on the ground before they even get there. Gee, I wonder why that happens.
Yeah. Well, if the Lord is doing that and also planning out all these rap references, then I guess He's making sure we don't have a wiggity whack Pesach.
I mean, I just feel like maybe I should be doing some rap reference. I feel left out.
No, we wouldn't leave you out if we were engineering a rap Pesach, which isn't a bad idea.
It's a terrible idea.
Okay.
It's worse than that.
Passover is, well, it goes on for 8 days, and it occurs at the beginning of the year, and it is a celebration / observation of freedom from bondage.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not like we're talking about a freedom from bondage that took place thousands of years ago, though we do speak of that. But we're not confined to that. In fact, every Jew is encouraged to think of themselves as being freed from bondage right now.
Yeah.
And you can become Passover aggressive. I saw some of that in the places that I've been, that people are Passover aggressive. I went to the store today and almost got hit by 3 people trying to walk around. It was terrifying.
Yeah.
What happened?
That's why the grape juice is red, because it represents the blood, you know.
Yeah.
Oh, I went to the store today and it was super crowded, and I like every time I turned around, it felt like 3 people were gonna knock into me. It was very anxiety producing.
Yeah, I guess it's a payday weekend in North America or something, because yesterday when we were shopping, it was also really crowded. So I think it's something about like the springtime too.
Yeah, so it made me Passover aggressive, Dr. Paul.
Passover aggressive, yeah.
Yes. Yeah. I was passing over and I was aggressive, you know.
Yes, that's good. That's good. I caught it. Now you're weaving in not just rap, but the DSM.
Yeah.
the Diagnostic and Statistical
Manual. I thought you would like
the
that.
American Psychiatric Association.
You are the night shrink.
Front, anyway.
I thought as the night shrink, you know, that you, Dr. Paul, would appreciate a good DSM reference.
Yes, I liked it. Passover aggressive.
Yeah.
Yeah. Go to the store and stick a ham in a random shopping cart.
Yeah. Just put it in there. Don't even grab anything. Just go like on the side of it, just like, and grab hold of it. And they're like, "What are you doing your shopping?"
And then I can do Shaggy and say it wasn't me.
Yeah.
Yeah. Definitely not. See?
Okay, we're gonna have to
other guy had face paint.
We're gonna have to send that video to your dad later. Like we had to do Rock the Casbah for you to see the armadillo. Now your dad has to be introduced to this. It wasn't me.
Yeah, I think so. Maybe. I'm seriously still not sure which Shaggy we're talking about.
There's a Passover armadillo.
No. It was
they get a bunny and we have an armadillo.
Yeah.
Well, first off, that's much better, and 2, no. That was last week when we were talking about the armadillo in the Clash video that we were.
I don't even know how that started. We started to have a conversation, and I asked Isaac what the name of the armadillo was in the video.
Yeah.
Okay, so the Seder service, which is conducted during Passover, typically on the first night, but variability is allowed in there, is a retelling. That's actually what Seder means, isn't it? Retelling.
Yeah. Seder means order. And it's because there's the order to the meal. Like if you say that, Beseder, everything's okay, right? Everything's in order. So Seder is the order of the meal. Magid is the section where you do the retelling. Takes about 2 hours by itself. In the Torah, it says that you do Seder the first night. Outside of Israel, we do the first 2 nights because in the early days, they weren't sure. And at various times during the persecutions, they've done them on different nights. So my ancestors, for example, during the Spanish Inquisition, sometimes did it on the 5th night because nobody was watching you on the 5th night because they knew it was the first 2 nights, stuff like that. So that is why. So in Israel, they have, one less Seder. So they don't have Yom Tifs the way we do in the United States or outside of Israel. So in Canada, as well, where you have the first 2 days are indeed Yom Tifs and like no work gets done, which makes it very complicated in a year like this year where you have Shabbat and then Pesach beginning.
Yeah.
And the same for ending,
Yeah, it's definitely something to think about, but ultimately, we are outside of the jurisdiction of Israel right now, and we in the diaspora still need to think about that kind of thing. So
do it in a way that works for us. That's what people have been doing.
And then you guys remember that in 30 days on May 12th, there is the holiday called Pesach Sheni, which was the Pesach for the people who were ritually impure for the first Pesach, because you always have an opportunity to come back and get it right, which I love. I love that imagery.
Yeah, it's like, this is a religion with a lot more second chances than I think people think we give, and also just in comparison.
I mean, we're nothing if not a practical people. As Dr. Fine has pointed out, we've been persecuted, we've had to hide. We've done things like light Shabbat candles every day of the week so that they don't know we're celebrating Shabbos. And, we've done those kinds of things historically. We Jews have done what works that allows us to survive persecution, but also allows us to have our ceremonies and our rituals and be Jews.
And you see that also with Hanukkah. So, Hanukkah, where you have the dreidel game, which was designed to distract, right? The Greeks would come by, there would be Torah study going on, the Greeks would come by and the people would close their books and just play this gambling game and be like, no, we're not studying Torah, we're gambling.
Yeah. Come on, we're living in your Greek equivalent of slums. We're all uncultured doing gambling. Totally, definitely.
Or a bunch of Philistines. Is that what you're saying, Isaac? I love it.
So just thumbing our noses.
It seems like, I'd like to talk about that for a second. It seems like all the religions I know, except for maybe Zen Buddhism, which is arguably not a religion at all, there's this tendency to take something that was done as a ritual, actually in a creative way the first time, and turn that into something that demands repetition. For a number of years at my psychology clinic, I ran a complimentary meditation circle on Saturday afternoons. And people would come and they'd sit in a circle and we'd meditate in a circle, which is really a cool way to meditate. But we took to speaking afterwards, and one day I brought a rain stick in. And you know what a rain stick is, right? It's, and so whoever had the rain stick would talk, and the rest would listen. And then there came a day when I have a deck of cards called soul cards. They don't have a book that says what their meaning is. It's just a bunch of ambiguous pictures that you can talk about what it looks like to you today. And but with the rain stick, when I brought out the pictures, I put the rain stick aside because I thought, we'd just do the pictures. And everybody was going, "Where's the rain stick?" So I didn't see what was happening. I brought the rain stick out, then we did the rain stick and the pictures. And the next week when I tried to do something else to bury it, they wanted the rain stick, the pictures, and the something else. This was toward the end of my running the circle because I could see that what was happening was a religion was growing.
Oh dear.
Right in front of my very eyes, and was without me desiring to do that.
Yeah, guys.
See how easy it would be to get people to subject themselves to that kind of we need the repetition, so we're gonna do what we did because we did it. And it's like I think Pesach is about freedom.
Exactly. And like philosophically, it's like once you start getting into the repetition of it, once it's just nothing but repeating and repeating, it becomes, if we don't keep repeating, we're going to get in trouble. And, it's like...
That's how you wind up in the corner going, no offense anybody, but Nami O Ringakio all over and over and over.
Dr. Paul, somebody at one of my seders that I attended mentioned this same idea, but as it relates to food, and that this is why we eat different food at Passover, so that we're having freedom from repetitive foods and from food addiction issues of the chametz and the leaven and all of that. That it's a time to cut all of that out.
And okay, tradition is to omet chametz, right?
Yeah.
But and I think that's a good exercise. But I, for one, believe that one does well during Pesach to think about all of the repetitive, habitual actions that you engage in, and reflect upon whether that's what you want to continue to do.
Exactly.
Whether that's something that some member of a very narrow-minded religion would see as sinful, or not. Well, it's just something that you've grown so comfortable with that you can be mindless during the period of time you're doing it. That's what I love about Pesach. We're encouraged to take on the action of becoming free today.
Yeah.
Each one of us now.
And
on
the outside, our ways seem lackadaisical, or like we're trying to undermine things, but so I think that just mindless repetition is far more unfree than anything else.
Yeah. I could go on and on about that, but we tend to gather moss, right? And sometimes that makes for beauty. It makes for this really nicely articulated shindig that is all ready to go without you doing much preparing for it, except getting the bits and pieces that are required for the business. But this one asks us, at least it asks me, to reevaluate almost everything. Just
absolutely
think about, is that who you want to be? Because time is what life is made of, and how you spend your time is how you spend your life.
Exactly.
And that's to be free would mean to be mindful, to be aware of what you're doing, why you're doing it, and at least as much of the time as you can master.
Yes.
I'm not, as they say in Mandarin, Sam Miao Sam Pu Ti. I'm not supremely enlightened the way Shakyamuni Buddha is said to have been. But we can all have a little light about us. We light candles for a reason.
Because that's how we start parties.
Well, we I never thought really of the dour symbolism of blowing up birthday candles. Oh, jeez.
It wasn't me. That's all I know.
Yeah, no, but I think one of the things candles always represent is light.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, what else could?
Yeah.
I mean, I know a few other things that can represent, but it's like you can't make dark candles, can you? That's kind of, You set them up, and they cast a shadow. Like, how do you do that?
Light is more powerful than darkness until somebody shows me a beam of darkness cutting through the light. I rest my case.
And if you can, please do. That sounds amazing.
That sounds amazing. I know.
Like on a scientific level,
Yeah.
probably an ill omen, but like, chemistry.
Is that what dark matter is?
I don't know.
Hang
But I
on.
do support better living through chemistry.
Okay, so I have here, courtesy of Chabad.org, who may not remember that I asked them permission if I could use their stuff, and they did kindly grant it. So,
for the record, dark matter is gravity. It's like a theoretical gravitational force that doesn't interact with light. That's how it's described.
Oh, okay. Would it be quantum entanglement then that would do darkness through light?
Hold on a second. And antimatter is okay. That's not even quantum.
antimatter is inferred from the mathematics of looking at squiggle thin gas.
Each particle in a group cannot be described independently of the state of the others, even when the particles are separated by a large difference. I think that just means that they're not very individualistic.
Okay, here's a question for you, Paul. Is it Schrodinger's beam of darkness that cuts through the light?
Okay, so what were you going to
Well, it either is or it isn't.
Exactly. So what were you going to read, Dad?
Yeah, so you were going to speechify. Continue the speechification.
I
I'm
was
sorry.
going to go into this handy dandy and mercifully brief compilation summary of the Passover Torah readings.
Mm-hmm.
And I also have a nutshell version of the Haftarah for the seventh day of Passover. Isn't it the seventh day?
Well, let's see. It started on the 12th, and it ends on the 20th, and today's the 18th.
So it'd be the 6th. Well, I won't. Well, I'll do the 7th day because that's what I looked up anyway. And actually, arguably, if it's sundown where you are, it's Friday.
Yeah.
No, it's Friday. It's Saturday. If it's arguable.
Yeah, we work by the moon, not by the sun.
Yeah.
Okay, now you're doing Modest Yahoo here. Out of darkness comes light, but that's also true. So yeah, okay.
See how mysticism can come into even the most well-grounded of philosophers.
Yeah.
Who says mysticism isn't grounded? Mysticism is great.
And here we go with that one.
I mean, think about it. We all believe in a supreme being who liberated our ancestors. Like, if that's not mysticism, I don't know what is.
I suppose it's
well, it certainly is belief in something that's of the mystic.
Yeah.
Yes.
So I
What a
think by
great
definition
mystical
that's
miracle.
mysticism.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mystical, wonderful miracles.
Yeah. And I mean, considering how many stereotypes and accusations against us seem to assume we're some kind of wizards, I guess maybe. Ooh, Dow Jones go down. Ooh. Anyways, what were you going to read?
Okay. On the first day of Passover, we read from the book of Exodus of the bringing of the Passover offering in Egypt, the plague of the firstborn at the stroke of midnight, and how, quote, on this very day, God took the children of Israel out of Egypt, end quote.
Oh.
The reading for the,
I wanted to add something to that. So
Oh,
remember
do.
you remember last week we were talking about 4/5 got left behind? So at my Seder, we were discussing this and how 4/5 died. They died because they didn't want to leave. They wanted to just be comfortable and in the luxury of Egypt. And so because the people who left, the Israelites and the mixed multitude who left, they left with all kinds of riches because the Egyptians were like tired of the plagues and were like, just get out. But the people who stayed behind, that 4/5, they died. I just wanted to add that since you were talking about this coming out of Egypt. Go on.
Yeah, okay. And you're saying they died soon after, because in fact all of them died.
Yes.
But whether they left Egypt
right,
or not.
They died very soon after.
Very soon after, yeah. Okay. Yeah. But what that says to me, because that group of people, that mixed multitude, including the Israelites, or the people who at the time prior to leaving identified as Israelites.
Yeah.
That group became Israel. That's the group. So
yes.
this has been a heterogeneous group since the Exodus.
Yes.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So another reason for not excluding people.
Mm-hmm.
If they if something in them calls them for whatever reason other than to jeer at us, to learn, or just to curiosity or whatever, join us. Got nothing to hide.
Yeah.
Okay, the reading for the second day of Passover, Leviticus 22 to 26, includes a list of the Moadim, the appointed times on the Jewish calendar for festive celebration of our bond with God. The mitzvah to count the Omer, that's Omer, not Homer, the 49-day, double, 49-day countdown to the festival of Shavuot, which begins on the second night of Passover. So that would put us at day 5, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Chabad, when I looked at it today, had us at day 6, but 5, 6.
Then we're on day 7 of Passover.
Hey, I'm just telling you what the site said. I don't know.
I am so confused. Anyway, and the obligation to journey to the holy temple to, quote, to see and be seen before the face of God, end quote, on the 3 annual pilgrimage festivals, Passover, Shavuot, and Sukkot. We're too widespread by now for that to be a reasonable request, but that's what the way it started. The readings for the 4 intermediate days of Passover include instructions to commemorate the Exodus by sanctifying the firstborn, avoiding leaven and eating matzah on Passover, telling one's children the story of the Exodus, and donning tefillin. A portion from the Parsha of Mishpatim, which includes the laws of the festivals. That's from chapter Exodus here, book of Exodus. A section describing Moses' receiving of the second tablets and God's revelation to him of his 13 attributes of mercy, which likewise coincides with the laws of the festivals. When one of the intermediate days of Passover is Shabbat, this is the reading read on that day, and it begins 12 verses earlier.
Yeah.
So I'm going to interject here. This is why triskaidekaphobia is not a Jewish thing.
Yeah.
Because 13 are the attributes of mercy of Hashem, and Friday is when Shabbat happens.
Indeed. And also 13 principles of faith from Maimonides.
Yeah. So there we are. You So for us, it's those numbers have a different meaning than they do for those of some other religions.
Yeah.
Who were at a shindig with 13 people on a Friday.
Absolutely, yeah.
On the 13th floor.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. The story and laws of the second Passover gets spoken of too. That you were talking about that earlier.
Mm-hmm.
And on the seventh day of Pesach, we now read how on this day the sea split for the children of Israel and drowned the pursuing Egyptians. And the song at the sea sung by the people upon their deliverance, which we might sing right now.
Mm-hmm.
And what's the 8th day? I'm just curious since you have all that there.
Okay. On the 8th day of Passover, we read Deuteronomy, the second telling of the law. Like the reading for the second day, it catalogs the annual cycle of festivals, their special observances, and the offerings brought on these occasions to the Holy Temple in Jerusalem. The 8th day's special connection with the future redemption is reflected in the Haftarah reading from the prophets for this day, which is from Isaiah chapter 2. Okay,
Awesome.
I'll get to
All
that Haftarah in a bit, but it just seemed if we're going to mention this song, we might as well sing it. Moses' sister Miriam wrote it.
Yep.
And she wrote it in jubilation at our survival.
Yeah.
And at the destruction of those who would have destroyed us.
Mm-hmm.
And we're setting about to do it at the very moment.
Absolutely.
And she asked the question, who is like you?
Yeah.
Doing wonders like that, doing miracles like that. Who is like you?
Mm-hmm.
She's saying, Mi chamocha barim Adonai, mi chamocha nera b'kodesh nora teilo osei fele mi chamocha barim Adonai, mi chamocha nera b'kodesh nora teilo osei fele aruta Ravalecha bokei hayam לפני משה זאני אנו ויאמרו העיניים לו לעולם ועד חמוך באים אדוני מי חמוך נגע בקודש נורא כאילו עושה נאמר כי פתח אדוני יעקב וגלו מיד עזק מי ברוך אתה אדוני ישראל מי כמוך באים אדוני מי כמוך נגע בקודש נורא Oh, say, mi chamocha, mi chamocha, nera b'kodesh nora, tehilu, oh, say, that's what she said.
Mm-hmm.
Probably made it up on the spot.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly.
Yeah. So the seventh day of Passover Haftarah, in a nutshell, is what I did have printed out. And I know we've been disputing, as Jews are wont to do, In this case, we're disputing about whether it's day 6 or day 7.
Yeah.
I printed out, I counted on my fingers and printed out day 7.
Okay, so that's where we're at. Yeah.
And if I'm wrong about that, I beg forgiveness and I take the entire guilt of that upon myself.
Yep.
It was my screw up. I screwed up for the first time in my life again.
Yeah.
Okay, the reading is from 2 Samuel chapter 22, verses 1 to 51. It describes the song King David composed in his old age, echoing the weekly Torah reading where Moses delivers his parting words to the Jewish nation in song form.
Yeah.
David's song expresses gratitude to God for saving him from all his enemies. He starts with the famous words, "The Lord is my rock and my fortress." He goes on to describe the pain and hardships he encountered and reiterates that he always turned to God in these moments of distress. He recounts God's reaction to those who tormented him. Quote, "The Lord thundered from heaven, and the Most High gave forth his voice, and he sent out arrows, and he scattered them, lightning, and he discomfited them. I have pursued my enemies and have destroyed them, never turning back until they were consumed." End quote.
Absolutely.
The king attributes his salvation to his uprightness in following God's ways. Quote, "The Lord rewarded me according to my righteousness, according to the cleanliness of my hands, he recompensed me." End quote. The song ends with David's expression of thankfulness. "Therefore I will give thanks to you, O Lord, among the nations, and to your name I will sing praises." He gives great salvation to his king, and he performs kindness to his anointed, to David and to his seed forevermore.
Hey, Paul, Dr. Paul, look, Nathan joined us.
Hey, yay!
Thank you.
Yeah,
He's passing over us.
Nightfall where you're at, so we can actually see you as if you're not lurking in the darkness.
Exactly. Yes.
Yeah,
Yes, you're passing over. It's nice to have you passing over with us.
Oh, praise God for that. Yes.
Good Yantif, Nathan.
Thank you.
Yeah, we're talking about freedom from bondage.
Yeah.
Amen.
Yeah, because it was in these days, right here, right now, that we are being freed from slavery.
Yep.
Right now.
Yeah, I went to a Seder many years ago where that was the theme, was talking about one's own personal Pharaoh. And, I actually asked at my Seder this year, why is Mitzrayim a plural word? And it was very funny because the grandfather of the family looked at me and he said, "That's a really good point, because Egypt is not a plural place." And so the son then started to explain that it's because the constriction was both physical and spiritual, right? And so you have multiple forms of bondage that you need to be released from.
Yeah.
Amen.
Yeah, that's thought-provoking. Yeah. What came to mind when you were talking about that was the line from the Torah, justice shall you pursue. There have been lots of discussions about why the word justice is repeated there, because the belief is that there isn't a single unnecessary word in the Torah. So how come justice? And there are a number of different ways. I read 3 and I remember 2 of breaking down justice into 2 components. Right? like the letter of the law and the spirit of the law. Or for the judge to keep in mind that he or she is probably not of the same social class as the person being judged. And that for justice to prevail, it needs to be indexed to social class. And it's not really justice to say, oh, well, it's equally unlawful for a person like Elon Musk to steal a loaf of bread as it is for a poor person. But that's hardly equality.
Yeah.
Right.
If you want to get into the business of parking tickets and how much they matter to a person, that is certainly dependent on social class.
If
And that needs to be kept in mind.
Yeah.
Right? So
if the punishment for a crime is monetary, then it's only a regulation for the poor.
because the rich don't care. So it's like it brought that to mind, the Mitzrayim being plural. I'd never thought about that.
I think about it every year because for two reasons. One, I always think it's an interesting question to discuss. But I also think about it every year because I like to do my own inventory, right? And especially this year. But I like to do my own inventory about those sorts of things in my life. So then I think about these things. And also linguistically, I think about these things, because I'm trying to learn. So like Marav still has to tell me what certain things mean. Or, at the Seder, the little boy at the Seder wanted me to do all these readings. And I was like, well, I'll do them in English, and I was very grateful that I didn't have to do Manish Tana because I don't think I could have gotten through it. It was a very funny experience. It was wonderful. It was nice to be with a family, and this particular family. And by the way, the wife, her parents were Chabad, so she grew up Chabad. So I told her how much I loved them and everything. But it was just a very funny experience to sit and have these discussions that, I think are important, but are often not discussed, but that's how my brain works. So, Nathan, I don't know, have you gotten to go to Seder? So we're just kind of talking about the holiday today. But I went to Seder's last week. So, we didn't do one last year. Paul and Isaac and my mother and I had a Seder together.
Oh, beautiful.
Which maybe we'll do again, maybe next year, but,
once things have settled down a bit.
Yeah.
God willing.
Next year on the internet.
Yeah.
Yes.
Doesn't ring like next year in Jerusalem.
Yeah.
Next year in Jerusalem from on the internet from Jerusalem. I don't know. Maybe New Zealand. Maybe we'll.
One of us needs to go to Jerusalem next year.
Yeah.
Yeah. Somebody needs to go to Jerusalem. Somebody needs to go to Portugal, and somebody needs to go to New Zealand, and somebody needs to go to Vietnam. But nobody will be going to Vietnam, Portugal, New Zealand, or Jerusalem at this point. So But anyway, Nathan, have you ever been to Passover Seders?
No. I'd like to learn about them, though.
So I think up in your area, I know when I was in the right-wing corner, they had Chabad, but I think up in your corner of the world, they also have Chabad, and they would have had Passover Seders. And I guess if I had thought about it, I would have tried to connect you into that idea, but I didn't think about it because I thought you were busy because, I know it's Good Friday, and you missed my little quip about how they kicked me out of Sunday school because I'd asked what was so good about Good Friday, because it didn't seem like a good day for anybody,
Yeah.
Like I know that's what it's called, but it doesn't seem like
No.
it's just. So they kicked me out of Sunday school. That was on one occasion because I asked this question. They kicked me out numerous times, which is why. Well, no, it's one of the reasons that I say the church left me is that I kept getting kicked out of Sunday school for things, but.
That's just wrong, Rebecca. I mean, I
know. And my dad was a pastor, so it made it even funnier. Here I'm the pastor's kid being kicked out of Sunday school for asking too many questions.
It's so illogical. It's like, I mean,
Like this is the kid of the person who's supposed to be doing the studying here.
I
Exactly.
thought it was illogical from the standpoint that you're supposed to come to the to faith like a child. Like I do it, like I'm almost like a Jewish kid, when I go to
Mm-hmm.
things. Like I get super excited. Like it's very funny to a lot of people. Even the holidays and observances that are supposed to be very somber, I find a lot of joy and beauty in. And so like I'm always like Dr. Paul's already cracking up because he knows like
Yeah. Well, that's the thing. It's like even if it's a somber thing, it's still supposed to be our acknowledgement of the self, of a cultural standpoint. So it still matters in that way, and can still, and participating in it is exciting to an extent.
right. I think so. But I agree with you, Nate. I always thought it was wrong, never appreciated it, but
No.
it is what it is, and not everybody likes questions, and I think not everybody likes questions they don't know how to answer. So the theme when you go to a Passover Seder, the theme of the night is questions, right? So you ask questions about all sorts of things. So, and that's what the Manish Tana is about how is this night different from any other, and things of that nature. And so then you ask questions, you have discussions because you have the meal, and then there's a meal. So Passover started on Saturday night. So I went to the family for the Seder Saturday night. Then we had a daytime meal together during the day. Then we had a Seder Sunday night. And then Monday we also had a meal during the day.
Yeah.
Cool.
So we did a lot of stuff together, and so during all of this time, you ask these questions, and
some communities are held together by faith. I really think it's at least partly true that the community of Jews is held together by debate and questioning.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's really true.
100%.
And there's a real
wrestle with God. That's what Israel means.
Yep.
Well, there's also really an art form. Like I remember, when I was about 2 hours from where Nathan is, I think it's about 2 hours. I only made that trip once, but
You're right.
I remember there were some people that came to the Chabad house that were not Jewish, and they wanted to study. They were part of a group. I forget the name of it now, but there was a Christian group that wanted to learn more about Jesus's life, and so they were coming to learn about Torah because that's what Jesus would have been teaching back in the day.
Exactly,
and somebody had asked some question that I would have said was mildly offensive, maybe incredibly offensive, but at the very best, mildly offensive. And the rabbi just sort of, you could just kind of see him collect himself and go, "That's a very interesting question," and just sort of go on with an explanation. And I think that there's a presumption in Judaism that unless somebody has developed a reputation or is really known to be sort of a bad character actor, there's a presumption that maybe you just don't know how to ask the question. There's those 4 sons, and you remember me telling you last year that arguably the Chabad Rabbi Schneerson had said there was a 5th son who didn't even know there was a Seder to which he could have attended. And you heard me talk to Isaac about that whole essay about, how a bun became a bagel. No, it's the other way around. How a bagel became a bun. And it's all about the assimilation of the American Jewish community. And some of it is good and some of it is not so good.
We did read the thing about the sons at one point, I remember.
Yeah, we did talk about this. And so when you go, Nathan, there's 4 sons. There's the wise son who's smart. And we had a discussion about this at the Seder as well, Dr. Paul. What's the difference between the wise son and the wicked son? Because there's 4 sons. So there's the wise son, the wicked son, the son who doesn't know how to ask, and the simple son. And actually, these children, according to this essay about the bun becoming a bagel, these 4 children represent each generation.
Gotcha.
So you have the wise son is like the immigrant parent, then then the wicked is the second son, the second generation, so first American born, who's trying to assimilate. Then the third one, right, is the simple, or the son who doesn't know how to ask, because he's totally confused because, he's in trouble if he doesn't do his math homework, but he can skip his Hebrew homework. And then the son who doesn't know how to ask, and then, is just so far removed from everything, right, because he's just removed. And then the fifth son, so when the rabbi who wrote this essay, I want to say it was Rabbi Greenberg, when he wrote this essay, he talked about how that America's youth at this time was really the fourth son and really like had no idea what was going on and how to ask these questions. Like knew there was a Seder, but had no idea how to connect in. And then Rebbe Schneerson in the 90s, I think it was, had argued that there was a fifth son, and the fifth son had no idea there was a Seder to attend. And so those are the people who have no idea that they're Jewish. Maybe they're descended of crypto Jews like me, and our ancestors went underground, or maybe they're, descendants of people who just had to completely change their lives and didn't go underground because they were trying to survive the Nazis or some other situation. It's a whole spectrum. And then I was talking at our Seder that I went to about, our hostages who are still being held captive and how I hope that they can have a Passover and be freed. And it's terrible that those people were taken and that so few of them are left now. I read that they found a dog who had been kidnapped into Gaza alive and relatively well, and saw the video of this dog being reunited with its owner, and it was so sweet because
King Edward Spaniel, I think, or King somebody Spaniel.
Because what a mess, because you saw, like, I don't know if you guys saw it, but Governor Shapiro in Pennsylvania, somebody like they were basically charged with arson and attempted murder for like firebombing his house during his Seder.
Oh.
It was the pictures were very
wow.
Well,
and the assailant, he said if he had encountered him, he was going to beat him to death with a hammer.
Yeah, it was it's very very bizarre. And, I was thinking about that too, Nathan, because I didn't have to walk very far, and the couple that I was visiting, they walked me home each time. So like I was maybe going 4 houses away from here. But I was thinking about that on the last night, because the last night I was leaving, because you go very late. You go till about 2 a.m, which is how I remember it as a child. So, you guys have heard me say this before, that, Lake and Riley, who was that college student killed in the middle of the day, was from my town in Georgia. My husband drove past her funeral when he was out doing errands that day because the church was in our town. So I was thinking about this because the wife went to walk me home, and we started to walk, and we didn't get very far, and her husband joined us. And I said to him, I'm really glad that you did that, because I was kind of concerned about your wife walking home by herself, because when this young woman was murdered in the middle of the day, the prosecutor's description was that this man was hunting women, like hunting women for sport, which was very, terrifying thing for me to read and think about. And so I said, it was very good that he joined us, because then she doesn't have to walk home by herself, right? Otherwise, we'd be kind of in a loop, because I wouldn't have wanted her to walk home by herself. So we were talking about that at the I think the Sunday meal that we had, where I was saying I really appreciated that shows that he had some good upbringing, and his parents were the ones visiting, so his father was the grandfather and everything. It was a lot of fun to see that many generations together and everything,
Amen.
So it's I don't know. It's I don't know what people get an idea in their mind, and then they want to try to prove something.
Yeah, so this guy that firebombed Governor Shapiro's house apparently did so because he doesn't like Governor Shapiro's views on Gaza.
Correct.
And on the war in Gaza. And, I think, unfortunately...
Well, that makes sense. So let him off. That's perfect,
Yeah.
totally justifies it.
I shared a video that I saw of Arnold Schwarzenegger talking about rising anti-Semitism and his visit to Auschwitz. And I shared that because, people, there's also been other videos where he's talked about, his family's past and stuff like that. But I shared it because I thought it was very interesting to hear him talking about what he saw, the evidence of these things, and in the backdrop of this whole thing, with Governor Shapiro, because sure, he doesn't like his views on Gaza, but I'm sure there are other things. And Governor Shapiro, of course, came out and said, well, I'm going to still continue to have my faith, and so will the Pennsylvanians, and we're going to do what we're going to do. So
I think, I think it's, somebody made an observation that I read just the other day, and as usual, I remember the observation, but I don't remember who made it. But it seemed pretty astute. Said, if the Gazans had the means, they would kill every child in Israel.
Yeah, absolutely.
And if it is the case that the Israelis have the means, but they don't do it. They don't want to.
No.
Yeah. And I just thought that was a very astute observation. That in a world where people are turning words around, I mean, people are doing that a lot, folks. like you ought to look out for it. Like Dylan says, now everything's a little upside down. As a matter of fact, the wheels have stopped. What's good is bad. What's bad is good. You'll find out when you reach the top, you're on the bottom. It's a poetic way of putting it. It's just, it's like, who is it who takes every opportunity to kill the other?
Right.
Who is it who does that? And that seems invisible to a frighteningly large number of people, because it's not the Jews who are trying to do that.
Yeah.
And you can tell by all the energy that's being put into it that it's false, because the truth is the case. You don't have to pour a lot of energy into the truth.
Correct.
Because it just sits there being true. It's the lie that takes the energy.
right.
You gotta keep building the lie, right?
Correct. And I was thinking about what Dr. Rebecca was talking about earlier with, just the, part of the Jewish tradition is just questions, and that's why, to me, as a, born and raised Christian in a Christian family, my heritage, but what when I've come of age and I had Jewish friends and I learned more about the Jewish faith and the Jewish heritage, there was one thing that really stuck out to me and that's why many reasons I admire the Jewish community and the Jewish people, but there was one of the big ones was they're fearless when it comes to just questioning and even questioning their own faith. They'll never, they're passionate about their beliefs, and if you want to call it a dogma, but they'll never let their passion overreach their logic, and to much the shame of, I'll say, my own Christian faith, and then I put the Muslims in this category too, is that if it's not fitting into the box of their dogma, well, sometimes the result is, well, I got to just sock you in the nose, And then
Yeah.
when you take it to you look at history, the Crusades, or you look at what's now with the Muslim community in Iran and basically all over the Middle East. I mean, Jordan may be a little friendlier to the Jewish people now, but not very much. But it's like, man, we just can't live with these people. There's no paradigm where we can tolerate their existence. And it's like, man, when you look at the insanity of that logic, it's mind blowing. And
Yeah. And go ahead, Nathan. I didn't mean to interrupt you.
oh no, I just and it, and it's just I just try to figure it out how logical people can be, productive in many other ways, but when it comes to something like that, it's like, and you boil it down to a microcosm. Like that Sunday school teacher had a child just asking some very legitimate questions. Well, my only response is, you have to leave. I mean, it doesn't make sense.
Yep.
Yeah, it didn't make sense to me, and it really it did hurt me a little bit, but I did manage to get over it in adulthood. But I've had a much nicer experience in Judaism from the time I was a child with questioning, and I think what's interesting about what you're saying, right, is that I would say, Judaism is the oldest of the three Abrahamic faiths.
Mm-hmm.
So Judaism is the root of both Christianity and Islam. And what's interesting is that Judaism and Christianity on paper are fairly close, but are very different in this regard. Like, so in Judaism, there's a whole set of writings called the Midrash.
Mm-hmm.
And the Midrash was designed to explain things because the early rabbis did not like it when there were holes. So, for example, in Genesis, there's 2 creation stories.
Yeah.
So there's Midrash about this. And this is where the Midrash of Lilith shows up, right? Because Lilith isn't named in Genesis, but this is where the idea of Lilith comes from. Because the rabbis were like, well, wait a minute, we can't have 2 creation stories and no explanation. What's the explanation for that? And to Dr. Paul's point, right, there's a wrestling with this. There's a, well, why would we have this? And, what happened and what would be the appropriate explanation? And, I don't know how they came to this conclusion, but I have been to families in Brooklyn where I've seen the amulets they hang above the baby boys' beds to protect them from Lilith and stuff like this. So I've seen some of this. But that's how you get some of this other, we were talking about mysticism a while back, right? This is how you get some of these more mythical mysticism type of things where they're trying to explain something. And I think that's very interesting that the Jewish response is to explain, whereas the Christian response, at least in my experience, was to shut it down.
Correct.
And then I think that you're right. In Islam, one of the things that is problematic in modern society and in Islamic communities, and I have friends who have told me this, is one of the problems is whenever you try to get to a reformation, the hardliners kill the reformers, right? Like, so Judaism has had many reformations. Christianity had its reformation, but Islam really has never had a reformation because the hardliners don't allow it. So when you look at like years ago, right, when Iran had President Khatami, and Khatami's wife did not wear hijab,
right,
but it was a whole thing, right? And then they went back to more hardline, and then I don't know, I haven't read much about their current president, but in general, the mullahs are in charge anyway, so it doesn't really matter where your president stands, right? But this is what tends to happen, right? Is the scholars who want to reform Islam find themselves dead.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Because it going all the way back to it's like a conflicting with their dogma, and so they can't take the higher logic, if you will. It's like, well, maybe we can't figure it all out, but we can still sit and break bread together, and exist.
And I think there was a lot of that in Christianity too, because like one of my history professors at Hope was so funny, and he would talk about people were smoking like heretics, which is a great historical joke there for Isaac who's studying history. But you know, that was always his thing. He would be like, "Oh, these people are smoking like heretics," and I would just sit there and be like, "What are you talking about?"
Yeah, that's the thing. It's like, imagine what's going on with this one right now, but the thing is that, like, it's not like the Christians have had much of an easier time with that, because every time someone, because like through their earlier history, you have every time somebody tries to think up an explanation for something, it ends up having to go to the ultra tribunal in Constantinople, and every single one of those leads to a massive schism, and there's like a million different little like subforms of it that have existed over time because of that, and it's constantly fracturing itself over that amount of need to play by the rules. And that's sort of what I was getting at about like the idea of how Passover being a celebration of freedom and like working as a as something less rigid is like appealing to me, because it's like it becomes more about like it's like you mentioned the meat rush, which are very interesting to me, because it's like I've seen firsthand like commentaries by Catholic groups and stuff who read Tanakh, but they read Tanakh like it's a holy text by their definition, which is the undeniable word and law that we must all live by forever and ever and ever. And that's where a lot of the things about us eating children and burning excrement Jesus or whatever, right? And all of those other horror stories. It's like, no, guys, you think that's something we all believe because you look at these things as unchangeable universals, even though they historically have not been, while we look at them as the opinion of some guy from a while ago, probably because we felt like we needed to look into some deeper ideas, but also like, that's just their opinion, man. And it's and I think that's why you see like, recently there was oh god, how does it pronounce, Eid, which is a major Muslim holiday, and Ramadan, which are major Muslim holidays, where they have a very strict way of doing things. And throughout that whole thing, I kept seeing hardliners making posts on social media about how much better that makes them, and like, look at the holiness we take in that the others do not, and such. Like, why do you deny us what is truly the greatest, and blah 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 stuff I've already heard from Catholic priests my whole life. And you have the whispers of, oh, I heard they didn't go to Easter Sunday Mass and stuff. And we're here celebrating Pesach by talking free form.
I have literally
that's sort of
been asked to leave a church because I kept asking what the rules were for.
Yeah, exactly. Like it's
that's why I like you, Paul.
Like, how come? Right?
And like, listen, I'm sure that the people who are doing these rituals and believing these things genuinely believe at the bottom of their hearts that they are doing something for Hashem, and I'm sure Hashem appreciates that in that way. But it's also very telling about the differences in how we do things, and, well, ultimately why I'm sitting here celebrating Pesach and not the others. In that way you can like contrast Pesach to others as just sort of a way of defining the base foundations of Jewish philosophy and such. And
I'll tell you what, Isaac, I had a very hard Ramadan. You know why? So many of my Muslim friends got hangry. Hangry is a thing. God. And so one of my Muslim friends, like, he said some very terrible things to me. And I said, what is wrong with you? And he's like, I'm sorry. He goes, because they can only eat after sundown, right? So they fast all day. And so I said to him, I was like, what is wrong with you? I said, why are you speaking to me this way? And I was like, we don't talk to each other this way. What is wrong with you? And he's like, I'm so sorry. I'm like, and I'm like sitting here and I'm laughing because it's not funny, but I'm laughing because I'm like, man, hangry is a thing. Like, I don't want to hear about emotional women and being hangry and all of this because like, it's so bad.
And putting yourself in a situation like that is supposed to make you holier, closer to God.
Yeah, isn't it so that what the rules are for is to make us more godly?
Yeah.
So if it's moving us in the other direction,
Allah don't
moving us
ask
towards
people.
hatred and exclusion.
And it's like, from what I understand, Allah don't ask you to starve yourself until you're chewing other people out. Well, okay, he apparently
it's true.
To do the ritual, but like it's like, if it's leading you to act in a way that's unbecoming, like what are we doing here?
Well,
I mean, you'd have to fiercely believe to embrace any of these exclusivist philosophies.
Yes.
You have to fiercely believe that that God loves you and your people and does not love others.
Yeah, exactly.
If that's the case, I have no reason to give him thanks and praise, do I?
Mm-hmm.
It's like that's not the God that I am comfortable believing in.
Yes.
This comes. To me, it's very basic.
Yes.
How did human beings come to discover spirituality or become spiritual? Right? And I think it springs. Unfortunately, I hate to admit this. It springs out of our capacity to understand.
Yeah.
Because the moment that you have a reasonably mature capacity to understand, one of the first things you notice is that you don't understand the majority of things. Right?
No.
There's just this much huger domain of that which is ineffable to you. Right?
So, Dr. Paul, do you think
what are you going to call that? You call that something, right?
Do you think it's ego that causes that in people?
I think that people want to believe in some idea of absolute rightness.
Mm-hmm.
And the world of the relativity in which we live, that is our home, right? There are times when things that would generally be seen as wrong are in fact the right thing to do, and and if you're insecure enough to have a really huge ego, then you're going to cling to the idea that there are absolute truths. Yeah. Right? And there aren't. If there aren't any, we're not capable of understanding them. It's like when we talk about the creation story, it's like, who said it was created? It's like, all we know is we don't understand where it came from.
Yeah. Very true.
So we make up a story about it, which organizes what we do understand and relates it to everything we don't, all the phenomena that are beyond our grasp. And then I'm going to get in a war with you, Nate, because the story you embrace is different from mine.
Exactly.
It's like, gee, what a mess that is.
Absolutely.
And that's what we've been doing with our religions. Really, I hate to say it, but it is. It's like, look, the idea of something being right being relative, that something may be right for me that just isn't right for you. Our ability to grasp that when we think about what is right in the philosophic sense, what is correct, right? What is the thing to do. I don't know. I think it's fear. I think it's ego. But I think the bigger a person's ego is, the weaker their self structure is, and the more frightened they probably are. And they just cling to the idea that they understand what is. I mean, Nate, you and I have spoken about this, right? It's like
definitely.
Every religion I've ever read that believes in a Godhead describes that Godhead, at least one of the adjectives that applies to the Godhead is inconceivable.
Correct.
Right. Well, if it's inconceivable, why are we arguing with each other?
Exactly. Well, and it's kind of like what I was thinking. You use some good terms there in, clinical terms, like you said, insecurity. And that's kind of, as Isaac was talking about with, these different, rituals that, just for example, because Christians have them too, that they get so defensive about them and to the point of where they want to exclude. And really that's the hallmark of insecurity. I mean, if like I said, if whatever other person of faith is coming at you with questions or whatever, and it just can't fit in your box or your paradigm, that you feel that you have to, well, on a personal level, exclude them from your life if they're your neighbor, or if you're another country, you have to exclude their existence, like with the case of Israel and all its surrounding neighbors. I mean, it's just how insecure, and getting deep down, like if you were to say that was a man, how insecure is that man? That really is, it just blows my mind. And that's so that in reality, the Jewish people are the hallmark of strength. And that's why I think, for all these millennia, no matter how many different types of people, and it's almost sadly the world has always picked on the Jewish people. They still around. They're still standing. They're like Rocky Balboa. They get knocked down, but they are always there. And it's because they're so strong in their faith that they don't feel they need to push it on anybody. All those, they're always on the defense. They're never on the offense. There's no Jewish crusades. There's no, all these other things, like there's no, what's the intifada or whatever with the Muslim folks. There's not a Jewish intifada. I mean, we're just sitting here trying to grow grain and do our Torah and have our Shabbat.
If we want to be incredibly pedantic, intifada it just translates to struggle. So in some of the Arabic languages, they do call stuff like the Warsaw riots and stuff, the Warsaw Intifada, but that's not really the same. But it's sort of just a translation foible.
A friend of mine who's Muslim. This is the only bank manager who runs out of her office when I come in the branch and hugs me. She said that her imam gave as an example of a jihad. Rearing children is a jihad. It's a holy struggle.
I think perhaps it's one of those things that gets sort of disseminated into the broader culture in a way that's different than it's meant to. But ultimately, I'm just sitting here going, "Oh, first time for you guys."
But then we project this weak, loosely structured self-awareness and the behaviors and beliefs that result from it. We project that onto the Godhead and say that those are God's characteristics. In order to not have to consider the notion that we should wonder about whether those characteristics are the ones we ought to have.
Yeah, I would dare say that if whatever faith that you construct as a human being or whatever society, and if what it's like a test, and one of the tests would be if it requires a jihad or a crusade or something, you need to go back to square one and rethink the faith. You know,
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
just it's not right.
Yeah,
And
there's
I
something
guess
wrong.
Buddhists, I don't know if they have any. I never heard of them militant Buddhists, but the Jewish people.
There have been, yeah, oh yeah.
Yeah.
There was a time in Japanese history when the mountains were dotted with Buddhist monasteries, and they were all headed by various venerables, and they go and burn each other's monasteries down.
That's just insane. It's like people
Because
have peace and like it.
we're more enlightened than you are, right? So we're going
Yeah,
to burn
exactly.
your house down, right?
But I think Nate, you're onto something there, because I was reading how like the Cedar Sinai and Mount Sinai hospitals, right? Those health systems started because the other hospitals wouldn't hire Jewish doctors.
Yeah.
So the Jewish doctors did not burn down the Catholic hospitals. They just went and started their own.
Exactly.
And that's why you have things like Hatzolah as well. Hatzolah is a Jewish ambulance service. And, Hatzolah will, when I lived in New York, I had to call Hatzolah because somebody fell on the street in front of me, because everybody called Hatzolah because they show up before 911. And, I called, and the Hatzolah people were there before I even hung up the phone.
Wow.
And it's all men at Hatzolah, but that organization was created, right, to bridge the discomfort between the Jewish community and the outside world. And so it is interesting what you're saying about this strength and this security that comes from that, because that's essentially what happens, right? Is that then Jewish people go out and they say, okay, you don't want me in your club, I'll go build my own clubhouse over here. I don't need you. Which does take a lot of fortitude.
Yeah. It's like I'm not going to try to force my beliefs on you. If that's what you believe, so be it. I want to live with peace with you, in peace with you, and that means I have to distance myself from you because you have a problem with me.
Amen. Well, and it's so tragic, and I think of the European guilds, the Christian guilds, if you will, of Europe, whether it be bakers, blacksmith, and all that. And so many of them excluded Jewish people. And it was like, I guess we could be doctors, we could be lawyers. And then flash forward now, all those jobs are so well paid. And it's like, oh, darn those Jewish people, they're always getting the good jobs and all that. And it's like, well, they wanted to be doctors or they wanted to be bakers and blacksmith years ago, but you kept them out. I mean, we can't do
anything right. We can't.
Yeah.
And then they founded Jewish universities when the Ivies had their caps and stuff, right? This is the response. The response is, okay, you don't want me in your university. Well, I'll start my own medical school,
Yeah. And then the Christians or Muslims or whoever get jealous for them of that. And it's always something,
Yeah. Now, one of the good deeds without measure is to visit the house of study daily. So it doesn't stipulate whether that's you go study Torah or whether you go study calculus, right? But you go study, you work to keep your mind growing, and there's something about deciding that you're right already that fails to inspire that kind of working attitude. And then, of course, the people who work harder achieve more. Geez. You say, oh, well, yeah, they conspire to help each other. No, we don't. We argue with each other all the time.
It's true. Go ahead, Nate.
Oh no, it's just I don't know. Anti-Semitism is just something that's so pervasive and it's so deep on so many different levels. And just when you think there might be a commentator they're pretty cool in their political beliefs or something, and they're like, oh wow, they're pretty, not to use quote Fox News, but fair and balanced, but they're pretty balanced. And then all of a sudden it'll be like they'll drop something anti-Semitic, and it's like, whether it be latent or blatant, and it's like, oh, I mean,
yeah, that's what's been horrifying to me. During COVID, it was the anti-science crowd, but
yeah.
I never knew that I grew up with so many Nazis in my life. And it started with a friend of mine who had reached out to me one day, and he said that he was very upset because he never knew that he knew so many people who wanted him and his family to die. And I said, what are you talking about? I said, my news feed is clean. I said, I haven't seen anything. And this is a man whose grandmother escaped the Nazis in Romania. And his grandfather also, had to escape persecution like many of that generation. And so, he said this to me, and I said, I'm really sorry you're going through this. And I was really proud that I was in a community where I wasn't seeing this. And then all of a sudden, like, people that I knew in my childhood just started spewing this. I don't know if they're uneducated or if this is really what they believe. And eventually I just had to start blocking people. And, now I've been roped into planning the high school reunion, and I'm like really afraid because I've had to block so many people. I'm like, oh, this is going to be fun. But that's exactly correct. Winston and I have a classmate from Hope College that I've on more than one occasion had to comment on his posts and explain to people that he's really not anti-Semitic, even though this may sound like he is.
Yeah.
And I've had to explain what I think he's trying to say. And he's always thanked me and said to me, oh, yes, thank you for explaining this to people. And, because I do think that people, are entitled to their own opinions, and not everything everybody does is correct 100% of the time. And that goes for nation states as well. You were talking about Jordan, like, not everything that King Abdullah does is correct 100% of the time, so I do think that it's okay to say, I don't agree with this and here's why.
Mm-hmm.
But I do think also there's a lot of, very strange things that are going on that people claim, oh, this is just political, but they're going after us. I've talked to Jewish students at Emory. I've talked to Jewish students elsewhere.
Mm-hmm.
I worked at another university where, we saw some of this as well. And that was back before this got very popular. And it's very scary. I feel fortunate that I'm in a very nice community now. But, even here, some of that pops up. And even my friends, there was some violence in part of Brooklyn about a month ago, I guess it was. And like, that never happens. Usually those protests just stay in Manhattan, but they actually went into the Jewish enclaves. So I had to check on my friends who live there and stuff like that. It's a very frightening situation for people. And it's very unfortunate. And I love that Martin Luther King quote about, it's not the words of our enemies we'll remember, it's the silence of our friends. Because
Right.
Not only was it terrifying to see all of this crap come into my news feed, but then the silence from people. And I was just like, wow. I was like, really? And so, and I saw it on so many things, not just the anti-Semitism. I mean, there's been some misogyny that, has popped up that way too. And it's just like, what is going on?
Yes.
And then I have to question people, right? Because, we do have Ellie Weasel stuff that we work into some of our services, and Judah Pearl stuff too. And, Ellie Weasel said, right, that silence never encourages the oppressed. It always encourages the tormentor. And,
Yes.
so then I kind of sit there and I'm like, well, are people silent because they don't know? Are they silent because they don't know what to say? Are they silent because they're condoning this? And then sometimes I wonder, maybe they're silent because they're not seeing the same crap in their newsfeed that I'm seeing. Because it did take a couple days after my friend's comment to me for me to start seeing it in mine. And then I said the same thing to him. I said, I never realized I grew up with so many Nazis. Because to me, that is being a Nazi. Like, I don't like the way people throw around Holocaust language, but I think if you are advocating for dead Jews, you are in fact a Nazi.
Absolutely. 100%.
Yeah.
So I agree with you. It's really, I don't know, it's bizarre and it's terrifying.
Yes.
It's just, but I mean, the only thing to do about it, I think, is to to stay strong and to insist with yourself that you don't hate. You
Yes.
don't respond to hatred with hate. You can respond to a hateful argument by hating the form of that argument if you want to, but you don't really need to hate the form of an argument. You can criticize it.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I think that we could have a Mitzvah support group. People can join us for their support group on this too.
Sure. The thing is, all of this stuff that we're calling identity politics and stuff, all of this, I don't like those guys because they, right? It reduces to argumentum ad hominem.
Yeah.
And when you study logic, there's a bunch of argument forms that are illogical, they're irrational. And most of them amount to changing the topic. So you're losing the argument, so you change the topic. You say, I think everybody should be Zoroastrian. Right? Right. And you say, well, geez, I don't believe that. I don't want to be a Zoroastrian. And the response to that is, well, you dirty, lousy, stinky, cheaty rat. Right. That changes the topic. We weren't talking about, that person's characteristics before. We were talking about what we thought they ought to do. Right. And they disagreed. And instead of addressing the form of the disagreement, we changed the topic to trivialize any power of their statement, right? And like if the form of argument that you're using to win your arguments has a Latin name and is studied academically as being a form of illogic, you might want to pay attention. There's like, there's like going to the high ground. Yeah, and all my friends think so too, right? It's like, I don't know. Would that convince you to invest in Bitcoin?
So let me ask you guys a question. So it is 9:13 now for me, 7:13 for you. Are you guys hungry? Do you want to go and eat some food?
We should probably, but you know what? I poured some Kiddush wine, and I was wondering if we could do Kiddush.
Yeah, you want to do Kiddush? Yeah.
All right.
Would that be good?
Yes.
Anybody want to go get something to drink?
I don't think that I have time. Well, I guess I do have time. Yeah, I'll go get something to drink. I'll be right back.
Okay, cool.
Let me share it.
And then we'll do something about shutting her down.
Yeah.
And if you think this was long, folks, you should go to a Seder.
Yeah.
Oh, it's really true. The Seder goes till like 2 a.m. Let's see. Kiddush. Let me bring it up. Here it is. Okay. So I'm going to share my screen with this, and then I am going to go grab some more grape juice because I drank my grape juice because I was thirsty. So.
Yeah, I think I saw you doing it.
You did. You saw me doing it because I was like, I am thirsty. I should have known you wanted to do Kiddush, though. I know you love it. So, okay. So I've got it up on the screen, and I will be back in a minute.
You know what? Well, this is something we never do. I'm going to read the translation of it.
Yay, go ahead. Yeah.
I think we have a translation of it. Hang on. Yeah, hang on. Yes, it is. Starts out, of course, with "Blessed are you, Adonai, our God, sovereign of all, creator of the fruit of the vine. Blessed are you, Adonai, our God, sovereign of all, who finding favor with us, sanctified us with mitzvot." That's good deeds, folks. "In love and favor, you made the holy Shabbat our heritage as a reminder of the work of creation. As first among our sacred days, it recalls the exodus from Egypt. You chose us and set us apart from the peoples. In love and favor, you have given us your holy Shabbat as an inheritance. Blessed are you, Adonai, who sanctifies Shabbat."
Wow, beautiful.
And we use the fruit of the vine to represent that because we can make things with the fruit of the vine. We can be creative, just like Adonai is creative, and we can create a product which, when correctly used, helps create the proper atmosphere for Shabbat.
Amen.
Yeah, and yeah, that's it. That's the whole thing. One of the reasons I noticed the things we never read the translations for is because I've heard some people express the anti-Semitic notion that what we're really saying nasty stuff when we're singing in a foreign language. We're not. We're not. We may be saying clumsy stuff, but that's because we're clumsy.
Exactly.
All right, here we go. It's party time. And, okay, fruit of the vine. Boom. Yes. Okay. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam borei pri hagafen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'ratzavayu v'shabbat kodesho v'yavahu ratzon v'hilanu zikaron l'maseh reishit. Ki Zecher Lisyan Mitzrayim. Ki V'yatanu kitashka v'kol v'shabbat v'yavahu ratzon hinatanu baruch atah Adonai v'kadesh Hashabbat. Amen. L'chaim.
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 Life, good luck.
L'chaim.
Isn't it wonderful how 2 metric ounces just fits?
Yes.
One of these days, one of you is going to confront me and say, Paul, there's no such thing as a metric ounce.
No, I love it. I love the idea. In fact, actually, at my Seder, I was drinking from my cup, and I said, well, how much of this am I supposed to drink? Because I had a giant Kiddush cup they gave me. And Grandpa says to me, oh, well, you know, as long as you drink more than half. And I looked at him, and I was like, okay. And I was drinking grape juice because I didn't want to drink wine. I mean, I could have, but I had to walk home, so, you know.
Yeah. Guys, I really enjoyed this. It's been kind of free form. Nate, thank you for showing up.
Oh, thank you. I'm honored.
Hey, I think we should do freeform more often. I think that might be fun. I'm going to go ahead and end the stream here, though, but I think it's a lot of fun. And I'm sorry that Nate is disappearing into the. I was talking about Schrodinger's beam of darkness earlier.
Yeah. Okay, folks. We'll see you next week.
Thank you for everything.